Hi, my name is Terry Newhart. I'm the Executive Director of Norwescap, and today we're going to speak a little about three different parts of board governance. So this is all based on the John and Miriam Carver books and what we've used here at Norwescap. So let's just start off by saying, would this be good for your organization? What if your board was more focused on advocacy for your clients and for your organization? Were they learning more about the organization and its customers versus reviewing applications and personnel policies? Where the executive director or the CEO has greater flexibility to do his or her job? They stay out of the work of the staff and focus on board work. Where they create clear expectations for the executive director. Where there's less committees, and all of us know if there's a lot of committees, that's a lot of time invested, and a lot of times they are more often than not reviewing the work of the staff rather than looking forward and doing the work of the board. Would it be good if there was more accountability by the staff that you supervise, where the board sets the agenda for the board meeting rather than the staff setting the agenda, where they supply their own information, where they run the meeting and work on board work rather than staff work? How would it be if your board evaluated itself at the end of each meeting to see what worked and what didn't work and then improved it for the next meeting? And the reports they gave really had value rather than just reviewing the same old monthly thing each time they meet. What would it be like if you had less board members that were really focused on the work? Where there were engaged board meetings, where everybody's talking and engaged and participating in the meeting. Where they're focused on the outcomes of the organizations, not on how you get there, but what are the results and how do we do in the community? A place where the CEO makes the decisions that the board made before. Oftentimes, executive directors bring decisions to the board that really the CEO could make. With the policies that's set up under this, it works out a lot better because the executive director can make decisions and not be bound by a monthly meeting or a quarterly meeting, which slows everything down. And what would it be like if the attendance and the preparation are there for your meeting by all your board members? So, does your board spend a lot of time approving staff initiatives, talking about last month's finance report, managing the managers and rubber stamping what the staff already did? Not a very good use of time. Or duplicating the work that the staff was hired to do? You know, with a nonprofit, hopefully you've hired executive staff and managers and staff that are competent and can do the work. Oftentimes the board ends up being super staff, and they review the work that you did, tell you how you should have done it, and then in the end, they hold you accountable for what they told you to do, and if it doesn't work, it's your fault, even though it was their idea on how to get there. The board really needs to be focused on outcomes, not on strategies. So what's stopping good governance? Board agendas that are prepared by staff and focus on personnel issues and applications that they probably have no idea what they're approving, detailed strategic plans, which once again looking at how it's done versus what the outcomes are. They really need to be focused on what the outcomes are going to be. Oftentimes boards spend much of their time looking at what already took place instead of being visionary leaders thinking about the future and how to connect to the community. What else is stopping good governance? Committees. There's too many of them. Most bylaws set up a finance committee, personnel, planning, and many other committees. And in Carver's method, you throw out all the committees and kind of start over and use only those that you really need. In Norwescap's case, we have used a nominating committee so that the board can recruit good board members and orient them and work with them. We still have an audit committee that looks at the finances, and we have an advocacy committee that advocates for community issues. So what else happens? Once again, they act as the super staff, and as I said before, competent staff have been hired to do the work and report to the CEO. They don't report to the board. And so the board should be focused on the organization and where it's going rather than its daily wing flaps, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. What else stops good governance? The executive committee. They meet between meetings, they take away the responsibility of the full board, and it doesn't allow the board to speak with one voice, which really is a key principle of policy governance. Carver says you should meet all together and not meet at all. The nominating process, typically finding new board members is around finding warm bodies. Well, that's not the case here with Carver. You really want to find the right people to do the job. People who attend all meetings. They represent the people who are identified as the moral owners of the organization. In our case, it's the low-income community. They create and monitor the governance policies, which we'll talk about in the next video. They expect results and they monitor those results. And they determine what benefits for the people who are served and what the cost is for the benefits. That's what you're looking for in a good board member, not somebody who's an attorney just because they're an attorney or an accountant because they're an accountant. We still need those folks because we depend on their good advice, but we really want people who are involved and connected to the community. What else gets in the way of good governance? Helping the CEO. The board expects things, and everybody has their own expectations, but they don't make it clear to the CEO, and so we often try to guess what's working and what isn't working. So under the governance policies of Carver, clear expectations are put out there, and that's what we get measured on. And if we're not meeting those expectations as they're defined, then that's an issue that we need to talk about. So helping the CEO is good when we ask for it and when we need it, but we got to make sure the expectations are clear, or we'll all be guessing on what good outcomes should look like. What else stops good governance? Board size. Carver says more than 12 people. You have too many opinions and work won't get done. So that's the ideal group. Certainly groups have more than that. We have 18. We're trying to get down to 15 ourselves. As I said before, I talked about the wing flaps. Talk about a bird. I have friends who are pilots, and they say it's sometimes hours of nothing and a few minutes of terror, and that's the taking off and landing. And the board needs to know that you know how to take off and how to land, and focus on those outcomes, not on how you got there and all the activities in between. They can do that for their own work, but not for the staff work. So the CEO is responsible for the achieving board stated ends. Those are the outcomes that they want. We're responsible for preventing activities that would be prohibited by board stated policies, keeping everything legal and ethical and above board. And this is where the evaluation takes place, on the landings and the takeoff, not on the flapping and the activities in between. What else is stopping good governance? Carver says executive sessions, especially those done without the CEO and often about the CEO. He says, or they say, John and Miriam say that nothing productive happens by talking behind the CEO's back. If there's an issue with the CEO, you should have them there and let them know. Otherwise, once again, they don't know what the expectations are and they can't correct it. So he says always have the CEO as part of that discussion. What else stops good governance? Approvals. If you meet every month or every other month or quarterly, if you have important decisions to be made and you have to wait that long, it's going to make the organization less flexible and non-competitive. And so there are policies that set up for the executive director or the CEO that allows them to do that. And once again, he says, don't use the executive committee, because that once again erodes trust and stops the board from speaking in one voice. And oftentimes, as you know, if you've been in a board, an executive committee can come back and start all over again and have the discussion from the beginning once it comes to the full board. So what's the governance solution? The board creates policies that can cover many of the CEO decisions, and it takes the board out of the day-to-day work of the organization. So that's a quick look at what's stopping good governance. In the next video, you'll learn about the 4 sets of policies that Carver talks about. The board governance policies, the CEO limitations, the CEO linkages, and the end policies. So stay tuned and learn some more.